Most people think dealing with a difficult boss is about shutting up or trying to win the argument. But before you quit, confront, or shut down completely, there are a few things that you need to understand. Your difficult boss isn't a problem to solve. They're a system to decode. And if you don't understand the system, every conversation you have, every boundary you set, every carefully worded email you send, well, that's just fuel for their fire. Now, I know what works because I've spent 30 years on the factory floor and in boardrooms leading teams through production crises, union negotiations, and even more reorganizations than I can count. I've reported to difficult bosses. I've been that difficult boss, and I've coached hundreds of leaders who were stuck in both. So in this video, I'm going to break down the 3 hidden types of difficult bosses, the 3 patterns that quietly destroy careers and teams every single day. Once you learn to spot these, I guarantee you'll never look at your boss the same way again. First, let's define what actually makes a difficult boss. Because most people get this part wrong. They think a difficult boss is someone who yells, micromanages, or takes credit for your work. These are just the symptoms. The real definition is simpler and much more useful. A difficult boss is someone who consistently blocks your ability to do your best work and for you to get recognized for it. That's it. If they're tough, but they clear the path for you, then they're not difficult. When they blindly are demanding, well, that's a big difference. Now, here's the framework that I want you to tattoo in your brain. I call it power mapping. Power mapping covers 3 core fears that determine everything: how they communicate, how they make decisions, and how they react under pressure. And these give you the secret on how to handle them, your boss. The 3 fear profiles are the insecure, the overwhelmed, and the politician. Each one looks completely different in daily behavior, but each one can be decoded once you understand what's actually driving them. And here's the counterintuitive part. The worst thing that you can do for each type is exactly the opposite of what most people try first. Let me walk you through each one. The insecure boss is the most common, and they're also the one most people misdiagnose as micromanagers or a control freak. Here's how you spot them. They need to be the smartest person in the room. Every suggestion that you make gets reframed as something that they were already thinking about. Every win that your team has gets credited upward, not downward. And they don't delegate decisions, they delegate tasks. You can decide the font on a PowerPoint, but you can't decide the strategy. The fear underneath this is obvious once you look for it. They're terrified of being exposed as not good enough for the role. And in my experience, 30 years in manufacturing, multiple plants and multiple managers' roles, this profile is most common in people who were promoted too fast or promoted for the wrong reasons. They're technically brilliant, but never learned how to lead. So they compensate by controlling everything. Now, here's where most people mess up. When you're under an insecure boss, your instinct is to prove yourself. Show them that you're competent and demonstrate your value. You want to bring them all the solutions. That's exactly the wrong thing to do, because to an insecure boss, your competence is not reassuring, it's threatening. Every time you shine, you're holding up the mirror to what they're afraid that they lack. So the more that you prove yourself, the more that they'll tighten the screws. The playbook for insecurity is counterintuitive. You don't prove yourself. You help them feel secure first. Here's what this looks like tactically. Number 1, credit them publicly before you need their approval. I was building on what you mentioned last week about the production bottleneck. That one sentence does more than a month of proving yourself. Number 2, frame solutions as questions. What if we tried this approach instead of, here's what I think you should do? By asking for their input, they still feel in control. Number 3, give them visibility into your work before they ask for it. A 2-sentence Friday email like, here's what I moved forward this week and here's what's coming next week. The insecure boss doesn't actually want to micromanage. They want the anxiety to stop. So give them the information before they hunt for it, and the leash will loosen up. By the way, if this framework is already making you think differently about your boss, I have a helpful infographic called Mastering Upward Influence that will help you go even deeper. I've linked it down below. Now for the overwhelmed boss, who looks completely different from the insecure. They're not controlling, they're absent. They maybe cancel your one-on-ones. They don't always reply to your emails. They say yes to everything that you ask for and then never follow through. In meetings, they might nod along, but you can tell that they're somewhere else. They're not malicious, though. They're drowning. And here's the trap. Because the overwhelmed boss seems nice, they're not blocking you. They're stealing credit. Most people conclude the problem isn't that bad. So they just kind of wait. They keep their head down and they hope it will get better. But the overwhelmed boss is actually the most dangerous of the three. Not because they'll hurt you intentionally, but because they'll starve you of the one thing your career needs: advocacy. You need someone in the room when the decisions are being made who can speak up for your work. The overwhelmed boss can't do that because they barely are keeping their head above water. So, what do? Most people try to help. Take things off their plate. Shield them from the problems. Don't worry, I've got this. That backfires because now you've made yourself invisible. You're handling everything and they don't even know that you're handling it. When promotion season comes, there's nothing really to say about you. The playbook for overwhelm is the opposite of what feels helpful. You don't try to reduce their workload, you try to increase your visibility into their priorities. Here's what the tactical move looks like. Go to them and say, I can see that you're stretched. I want to help you by ensuring I focus on the things that will help you move the needle. Can you give me your top 3 priorities for this quarter? I have everything else under control, so I'll keep you updated on those 3. What you just did, see, you showed empathy, you offered relief, and you created permission structure for them to pay attention to your work without adding to their plate. Now, when those 3 priorities get delivered, your name is attached to it. And the rest of your work? Well, you're doing it quietly, building a track record, and most importantly, building relationships with other leaders who can advocate for you when your boss can't. I've seen this playbook save careers in manufacturing plants where the plant manager was running 24/7 operations and had zero bandwidth for anything else. The people who thrived weren't the ones who suffered in silence. They were the ones who made their boss's life easier in a visible, structured way. Okay, on to the politician, which is the hardest to spot because they're often genuinely likable. They remember your kids' names, they buy coffee for the team, and they give great presentations to leadership. The tell is this: watch what happens when something goes wrong. The politician never has fingerprints on the failure. The project that was their idea suddenly becomes the team's execution. The deadline they signed off on becomes an aggressive timeline that we all agreed to. They're masters of linguistics distancing. The fear underneath is loss of status. They built their career on perception management, and anything that threatens that perception is a threat to their identity. They don't need to be right, they need to look right. Most people under the politician try to document everything. They have the paper trails. They have the CYA emails as per our conversation. This is exhausting and it doesn't actually protect you. It just creates a cold war. The playbook for the politician is different though. You don't fight their game. You align your goals with their image. Here's the tactical move. Before you start any project under a politician, ask one question. When this goes well, what do you want the leadership to say about this? Get them to describe a win in their own words. Now you know exactly what success looks like to them. More importantly, you've made their desired perception explicit. If they later try to distance themselves from the failure, you can circle on back and say, I was aiming for what we discussed. Help me understand where we got off track. Another move, give them public wins that cost you nothing. In a meeting with senior leadership, you can say something like, James flagged this risk earlier, and that's why we were able to pivot quickly. It feels like you're giving away credit. What you're actually doing is building the bridge. The politician now sees you as an asset to their image, and that's the safest place to be. All right, that's the power mapping framework. 3 profiles, 3 playbooks. The insecure boss. Don't prove yourself. Make them feel secure first. Credit them publicly. Frame solutions as questions and give visibility to them that they demand. The overwhelmed boss? Don't disappear into the ground. Create structured visibility by asking for their top 3 priorities and delivering on those visibly. The politician? Don't build the paper trail. Align with their image by asking them to describe the win up front and give them public credit that costs you nothing. Here's the bigger thing I want you to take away. Most people spend their careers hoping for a good boss, but the people who actually get ahead, they're the ones who rise no matter who they report to. They don't hope, they decode. They understand that every difficult boss is running a predictable script. And once you know that script, you can stop being a character in their story and start being the author of your own. Now, if this resonated with you, we have deeper guides on navigating difficult workplace dynamics. They're real frameworks from 30 years of leading teams through high-pressure manufacturing environments. Check out our programs in the links below. And if there's a specific boss situation that you're stuck in, go ahead and drop some comments for us. I read every one of them. Great. We'll see you in the next video.